I'll let you know when it's ready. Okay, I'll hand over to Jack.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So this is our fourth, I think, session. This sprint has felt like quite a big one. So I'll whiz through my my bits and leave the rest of the time to the team to take you through the service. Next slide, please, Neil. Yeah, just like last time, there'll be a live Q&A session on the Slido link. Seemed to work quite well, so we've stuck with that. You got the next slide there, please? Yeah, so just a quick recap. We are developing an alternative offering to planning officers and staff, a more user-centered service for processing planning applications. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I say, sprint 4. So we are halfway through now, and we are fully aligning now with the RIPA project, so reducing invalid planning applications, which is another MHCLG funded project, and their beta is starting this week, Friday, I think. So we will be fully developing the permitted development service. And the benefits to this are detailed in the latest blog, which is on the website, and there are links at the end of this slide deck. So what have the team been up to? On the next slide, we will see. So yeah, further iteration of the prototype and testing. So I think we're up to what did I say? 18 people now across 7 different authorities. So that's pretty good going. We've built the core functionality now for officers and managers. As I say, we are fully aligning now with RIPA. So we've mapped their data across to BoPS. And the survey that we promised has gone out, and I think Dawn will confirm, but I think we've had 9 responses already. So that's good going. So I will hand over now, I think, to Claudia and Dawn.
Thank you, Jack. So this sprint, a lot changed with design and research, I'd say, on the design perspective. And that's mainly because we were able to look more at the relevant data that we'll be getting from RIPA. So the main things that changed was the questions, and Dawn will be explaining the findings too. Can you go to the next slide, please? So one of the changes was that in the previous one, we had questions that we had made up in the meantime to try and just understand the flow that officers and managers would go through. And this was a bit speculative, but it was just required at the time so that we could figure out everything else. And now we've received more accurate data that we'll get from RIPA. And so we've adapted the prototype to have the questions and the answers that applicants will do within their process. And this makes it easier for us to develop the MVP as well, and make sure that we're more integrated with the applicant's process. So now when the officer is looking at an application, they can see what the applicant has said and see if that is correct or not, and then answer the question, have the permitted development requirements been met? And so this is a really good step forward as we're making more strategic and informed decisions and really honing in on what the MVP will look, act, and feel like. Next slide, please. Another bit of prototyping I did this week was looking at the document management system. So this is the uploading process. So once they click on the on the homepage, there's a bar which has the plans on it. And if they want to amend documents, they can click this, and this will give them an overview of all the documents that are available for that application. And this has been done so that it can be scalable for other types of applications that have more types of documents than permitted development. And if they need to upload a new document, let's say an applicant forgot to enter one, they can press the green button and then they can click and decide what type of document it is. And we're going to look at different ways of doing a tagging system. This hasn't been tested yet, so we're looking forward to testing it. And once we've tested it and figured out what the implications will be, we'll see how it fits into the MVP and if it does or if it's a future step. Next slide, please. And this is a similar process. So this is how to replace a document. So on the home page of the document management system, there was a link to press replace. They can do that, and then they can also mark down why they're replacing the document. Through our research, we found that there's quite a few common reasons why a document might need to be amended by an applicant. For example, it could be needing design changes like material changes. Maybe there's a missing scale bar or an arrow. So this is a way to standardize that process. And then once they've uploaded the new document and they come back to the document management page, they are told that that document has been uploaded. And then at the bottom, there's an archived proposal documents area. And so that will help track the changes that are being made and why they're being made, and that will help with communication between the manager and the officer as well, and leaving a paper trail. So once again, this hasn't been tested yet. We're looking forward to testing it and seeing how it fits within the MVP journey. And now I'll hand it over to Dawn.
Thanks, Claudia. Okay. So I'm just going to chat through some of the key insight from this sprint. Excuse me. So we've tested mapping functionality consistently through the beta to really understand what is needed and why it is needed for permitted development applications. The site location map is deemed sort of essential because it really does give the context for the planner to understand the sites and what is included in the application. But it also needs to be included with the rest of the documents by the applicant to make it valid, which is probably why planners expected it to see it within the planning documents section. So that during testing, that was clear. However, there's also a desire to be able to compare the PD requirements against the documents. We found during testing that they wanted to have them visually aligned next to the documents, so that when they are going through the requirements, they could see the documents at the same time. So halfway through the sprint, we iterated on that and moved the documents to a right-hand tab. And we've tested that, but we're going to continue testing in the next sprint. We also found it out in the research that planners wanted a quick way to access and look at documents. We've seen some of the systems they use at the moment where documents are hidden away in folders. So having the thumbnails on the page, allowing planners to look at the plans at a glance, it's tested well. Also allowing planners to open individual documents rather than the full PDF to quickly look at the details and make the sort of desired checks, tested well too. Okay, next slide, please, Neil. Okay, so in terms of the actual permitted development requirements, this is obviously quite different to what we've tested before. However, overall, having the requirements in plain English has made the assessment simpler. That's what the planners said. However, it was quite interesting to see how planners worked through the page and their sort of thought process behind what they were seeing. One planner was still sure that she needed the GDPO at the beginning, however realised that she didn't as she worked through. Another planner immediately saw the advantage of removing that legislation language, particularly for junior planners. However, planners did sort of struggle to get their heads around not having the class displayed. Although the requirements are obviously selected based on the class of the application, one planner felt it was beneficial to see that information using the example of a conservation area, saying that depending on what class the development is, would determine whether permitted development rights would be allowed. We also found that conditions were missing. Planners expected them to be there, either within the list underneath the requirements, or one planner actually said that she would include them in the comments box. So that's something I think we do need to further test. Additionally, the comments box needs a bit more testing. It was very different the way the planners thought it should be used. Some thought it should be to put the conditions in. Another one said that it would give their decision with the reasons. So I think it was so different between the different planners. We definitely need to do some more testing in the future sprint. Okay, that's all. I'm going to hand over now.
Hi there. So, oh, sorry. So let me just jump into a different tab. Can someone else just verify that they see the app here?
Yep.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to demo a few paths through the system, essentially. People who are in previous show and tells will recognize kind of the skeleton structure that we had for that. And I'm going to show what kind of further features we've added this sprint, essentially. So I'm going to start as an officer, and I get my sort of to-do list essentially here of upcoming applications. We've added a color indicator of the number of days left for this application to be processed before it's met the target date. So as you may imagine, green means that you have more time, yellow is sort of in the middle, and red not shown here, but that would indicate like a closer deadline. And as before, we have all of the supporting pieces of information that you can expand as you need to refer to it at different points of your decision-making process. What I'm going to focus on for this demo is the core workflow, really. And this page, I'm just going to add some context around what we're presenting here. So people who are in previous show and tells know that we've been talking about integrations with the PlanX or Ripper service, and we've got links for, in case people might not be familiar with that, we can give links to that service later. The core of it really is that the applicant will go through on that service, they'll go through a series of questions and answers, which essentially is a kind of decision tree which narrows down their application to being sort of automatically decided whether it requires planning permission or not. And what we see here is what's demonstrated here is that our system has taken a sample data file from that service, and we've automatically built our own data structure around it. And as you can see, we've constructed sentences based on what the applicant answered and what their PlanX system asked them. So in a sense, this is a kind of report of what the applicant supplied on that public-facing service. And of course, this is extremely useful information for the officer. Once I've gone through this, essentially done my work of referring to the supporting information and mapping it in some way against the statements, I'm going to come up with a decision about whether the requirements have been met. This time we've added the ability to add a comment for that. So I'm just going to put in some dummy data for that here. And I see the decision notice that would be ultimately generated based on my decision, in this case for Southwark. And you can see that the decision I supplied is granted. And just jumping over some of the details here, just to demonstrate that we have the comment inserted into the notice here. We've got some placeholder values here that we're going to supply with real data in the upcoming sprint. Final task for me is to submit it to my manager, as you may have seen before. I'm just going to go through a similar journey just to show you a couple of other options before I switch over to the manager's view. While I look at this again, I just wanted to also point out that the fact, again, going back to this Ripper and Planex data, the fact that we can read in data files from Ripper and present them here on the front end is really good news for the full integration with their live service. So we already have that infrastructure in place in our service once that API is available. This time I'm going to say that the requirements haven't been met. As you might expect, the decision notice reflects those inputs with refused, and of course my reasons for that. So again, I'm going to submit this to my manager. And while I'm here, I'm going to do one more, which will see why in a bit. I'll just jump through this one quite quickly. This will be so I can show you a couple of paths through the manager's journey where they agree with the officer and where they disagree with the officer. So in summary, from the officer's point of view, we've progressed those 3 applications into awaiting the manager's determination. I'm now going to just show you the manager's view on that and go through a couple of actions on their side. So I don't see the actions that the officer took, in the sense of I don't see the links to the steps which they went through. Instead, I see a summary of what they looked at and their comments. Here I'm going to agree with the application being granted. Then I get a sort of a preview really of the final decision notice. And in this case, it matches exactly what the officer supplied. Just to point out that that last action there where I submitted the application, that was then progressed into this tab. And that's sort of the end of the timeline really for each application. So I'll just show you a couple more routes through that. So this was refused. Let's say I agree with the refusal, and as you'd expect, the decision notice reflects that again. It's refused for the same reasons that the officer supplied. Finally, I'm going to show you what we have currently for a disagreement. Here the officer granted it, but I am going to disagree. Currently, the manager's decision overrides entirely what the officer said, and the comment that the officer made now really it becomes obsolete in terms of what's presented on the decision notice. So the last step here really is just to demonstrate that we've progressed all of this manager's work really into the determine tab.
Great, thank you, Neil. So what are we going to be doing for the next 2 weeks sprint? So we're going to continue with the development of that document management feature. We'll also start on simple APIs to pull that information, that data out and display it as data, but also as if you want to print it out for the house stuff folder in the bottom of your wardrobe, and notify as well. This is a big element of this work, consultation and notification. So we're going to be looking to integrate with gov.uk's Notify service, and then further iterations to the content and styling based on feedback we get from more research and more testing. As I said at the beginning, there are some more links available at the end on the last slide. Thanks. Yeah, more links there. Our project website is bops.digital, so everything's on there. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining and presenting. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks, unless you get in touch with us beforehand. All right, thanks a lot. Bye bye.
I think actually we just have one question.
Yeah, I can read this out. It's from Sunny Sahadivan, and they've asked, can the manager refer the draft decision back to the officer for a further review? And that's not something that's in the system currently.
Yeah, we prototyped something for when I was doing other questions, and now that we've updated the questions, I need to relook at that. So that will be my focus for the next few weeks as well. So good question. We're going to figure out what's the best way to do that for now.
I think if I could add something to that, this is Martin here from Unboxed. I think in a research earlier on in the project in the alpha phase, when we spoke to planning officers and managers about that process, the consensus, if there is one, was that there would be a conversation. So in the past, when we all used to sit in the same office, we'd get up and go and have a chat about it and talk about the decision. And we didn't think it was worth building anything too complex in terms of having some kind of exchange between the manager and the officer. But there's certainly more work to be done in just understanding what that exchange is and what the steps that will be in the system are.
Okay, I think that's the only question.
All right. Sorry for forgetting the questions. Yeah, if that's it, then yeah, we'll see you